Okay, let's get into it. We're about to dive into a story packed with immense wealth, some really dark secrets, and a mystery so deep that, get this, Congress is now trying to solve it, years after most people thought this case was closed for good. So, it all really boils down to this number. Lawmakers who are digging into the Jeffrey Epstein files say that over $1 billion, that's billion with a B, moved from one man to another. I mean, that's just a staggering figure, right? And it raises one huge question. And that's really the central mystery we're going to unpack here. Why would a celebrated, super successful CEO give over $1 billion to a convicted sex offender? I mean, this isn't just a question for journalists anymore. It's now the absolute core focus of a new House investigation that's trying to dig up answers that have been buried for a long, long time. Right, so let's look inside this House investigation. What's actually happening? Well, members of Congress are basically forcing people to give sworn testimony. They're doing the kind of nuts and bolts investigative work that, frankly, a lot of people feel the Department of Justice just didn't do. They're trying to follow the money, connect the dots. And the two central figures in this whole thing, wow, it's such a stark contrast. On one side, you've got Les Wexner, a legit retail titan, very publicly respected. And on the other, Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier, a convicted sex offender. I mean, their public worlds were light years apart, and yet their finances were deeply, and I mean deeply, tangled up together.
So you've got to wonder, how does Les Wexner explain all this? Well, let's look at his side of the story, his official testimony. He went under oath to talk about his long history with Epstein, and he laid out a very, very specific narrative. And really, his entire defense boils down to this one quote. "I was duped by a world-class con man." That's it. Wexner's whole claim is that, despite being this brilliant businessman, he was completely and utterly fooled. He's not painting himself as a partner here, but as another one of Epstein's victims.
And the way he explains how he could have been so in the dark is this idea of compartmentalization. The theory goes that Epstein was just a master manipulator, right? That he lived this complete double life, building these huge walls between his criminal world and his financial dealings. And Wexner's argument is that this made it totally plausible for business partners like him to have no clue what was really going on.
Okay, so if we break down his testimony, it really comes down to 4 key claims. First, he says he was actually one of Epstein's financial victims. Second, he claims Epstein straight up stole money from him. Third, he says he has the documents to prove he cut all ties right around the time of Epstein's first legal troubles back in Florida. And finally, he says he deeply, deeply regrets ever meeting the guy. But here's the big question, right? Did the lawmakers leading this whole thing, did they actually buy it? Well, from their reactions, it sounds like they were left with a lot more questions than answers. I mean, check out this quote from one of the lawmakers. The more this deposition goes on, the less Wexner knows. Oof. That really captures the skepticism in the room, doesn't it? The feeling from some of these investigators was pretty clear. The more they pushed, the more Wexner seemed to claim he knew nothing, to a point that they just found it, well, hard to believe. And you can just feel the frustration in this next quote from another lawmaker. "We are running into dead ends." So instead of getting any clarity, they felt like they were just hitting one brick wall after another. The testimony that was supposed to provide answers was actually creating what they're calling dead ends. And this last quote, man, it might be the most pointed summary of how they saw it. One lawmaker basically summed up Wexner's whole defense as him alleging he saw no evil, heard no evil. The perception was that Wexner was just claiming total, complete ignorance of any wrongdoing. And that's a stance investigators are, let's just say, openly questioning. So this is the fundamental problem here, the real conflict. For these lawmakers, when you look at the sheer scale of this relationship, we're talking over $1 billion, and Epstein's name apparently showing up over 1,000 times in Wexner's files. The claim of total ignorance just becomes really, really hard to swallow. Which kind of brings us to a bigger, more systemic question, doesn't it? Like, why is Congress even doing this in the first place? And the answer seems to lie in what many see as a failure by another, much more powerful institution. Yeah, and you can see the contrast right here. On one hand, you have Congress, right now, compelling sworn testimony from all these key figures in Epstein's orbit. On the other hand, you have the Department of Justice, and this is under both the Trump and Biden administrations, which critics say failed to follow up on a ton of leads from the Epstein files. I mean, at the end of the day, they only prosecuted one major associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. So what you have is this huge accountability gap, and Congress is basically trying to step in and fill it. Lawmakers are chasing down these questions because they, and many others, believe the justice system just didn't deliver the answers that the public, and most importantly the victims, really deserve.
So where does that leave us? Well, with this final, really nagging question. Even with Congress trying its best, the investigators themselves are already talking about hitting dead ends. And it just makes you wonder, right? After all this time, after all that money, will the full, unvarnished truth about this dark partnership, will it ever actually see the light of day?